Good morning. Let's get started. In the old space over at the Austin Club, I have many places I can go hide and pace beforehand, kind of get myself together. Not so. I'm learning here on the first what limitations we have on space. I should just go hide in my office. I'm Evan Smith, the CEO of the Texas Tribune. I want to welcome you to our conversation with MJ Hegar, who I'll be pleased to introduce in a few minutes. But I really want to welcome you to Studio 919. Today is a big day for us at the Texas Tribune as we're formally inaugurating the use of our event space, which we have spent the last months putting together, outfitting, and preparing for your first visit and for use for many years to come. This is a big part of the Texas Tribune's plans for now and for the future. We have always done events with the public in the room as we have the opportunity to visit with people in elective office and appointed office. We ask hard questions of the people who represent us out in the world, and we've been doing that now for 9 years, as the Tribune has been in business for 9 years. Almost from the very beginning, this was part of the plan. But of course, we've not been here in our own offices doing it. We've been in other places. Many of you have been at the Austin Club in Austin for the events we've done over the last 9 years, and we've been very happy to have opportunity to be over there and to use that space with crowds of all sizes. But we always believed that we would be better off having our own space. And when we came over to this building a little less than a year ago, we came over with the intention of creating an event space that would be available to us for events like this, but also available to groups outside of the Texas Tribune for rental. This is really a community hub. What we have built here at Studio 919 is a gathering spot for people to have important conversations about the future of this state that we all love. Whatever your political party, whoever you vote for at election time, we all love Texas. There are priorities that we have to debate and discuss out in the open, talk to people we agree with and people we don't. And the Tribune's mission all along has been to have those conversations, to facilitate those conversations, put people in the room who don't agree. And so how great for us finally to have put a space like this one together, built it out, raised the money to outfit it with the latest technology, and to welcome all of you in the room. So welcome to Studio 919. We hope that this is not the last time you're going to be here. We look forward to many, many years of events like this one to come. And honestly, as you know, Tribune's been in business for almost 9 years. This is so important to what we do out in the world. We are a journalism organization, but these kinds of events are, in part, every bit as much the journalism that we produce as the stories that our reporters write, the databases that we post, the multimedia productions that we pull together. Everything that we do is for the purpose of informing and educating and engaging the public. And so we believe that having a place where we can gather all of you and people like you to have these kinds of discussions is really part of the Tribune's mission. So it's really a great day for us all. We thank you very much for joining us on this first day. Michael Ray DeLeon and Charlie Rezick, Agnes Varnum, everybody on the Texas Tribune staff spent many, many months working, Jacob Villanueva, Todd Weissman, I could name half the Tribune staff, making certain that this space was ready for you today. Let's acknowledge everybody who made it possible for us to be here with their hard work in getting this space ready. You are here today, as you have been for almost every Texas Tribune event for 9 years. You are here today at no cost to you. Texas Tribune events, other than the Tribune Festival in a few weeks, free to attend. Absolutely part of our mission. We believe that a public service mission cannot be accomplished behind a paywall. We have to make this content available, including most of our events, for free. But they're not free to put on. There's a cost, even in your own space, associated with putting on these events. And so I want to acknowledge the sponsors who today and for many years have made it possible for us to do Texas Tribune events in Austin and around the state for free. AT&T, PepsiCo, Walmart, and Southwest Airlines are sponsors of the Texas Tribune's events here and elsewhere. And I want to acknowledge a difference between doing our events here and doing them at the Austin Club in the old days. Taco Deli is the official taco sponsor of the Texas Tribune. If you're going to do events in Austin, you have to have a taco sponsor. Taco Deli has agreed to be our taco sponsor. Every time you come to an event at the Texas Tribune, there will be free tacos from Taco Deli. And Cafe Aragona is providing us with coffee as a sponsor of this event as well. Please acknowledge these sponsors. Sponsors pay the bills, members pay the bills. If you're not a member of the Texas Tribune, we'd love you to become one. Sarah Glenn, who has joined recently as our loyalty manager, working with all of our members, would be happy to sign you up as a member before you leave today. Many people in the room I know are members of the Tribune. You do make it possible as well for us to be doing the work that we do on behalf of Texas. So if you're a member, thanks, and if you're not a member, let me encourage you to become one. We will be here a lot this fall. Between now and Election Day, it's a little bit like being on a slip and slide. I don't know that we're going to have control of our bodies. We're just going to zip along through and pass the election with events. So let me very quickly run through events, most of which, but not all of which, are listed on our website, and encourage you to come back. Next Thursday morning, we'll be back here on September the 20th. Same time, same place, with Mike Collier, the Democratic candidate for Lieutenant Governor of Texas. We have extended an invitation to the incumbent, Dan Patrick, to join us, and we're hopeful that the Lieutenant Governor will join us at some point between now and Election Day. On October the 4th, Colin Allred, who is the Democratic candidate for Congress up in Dallas in Texas Congressional District 32, running against Pete Sessions, will be here. Same, we've extended an invitation to the Republican incumbent. Hope he'll join us. October the 8th, State Representative Travis Clardy, Republican of Nacogdoches, one of 7 declared candidates for Speaker of the Texas House in the first open race for Speaker in 25 years, will be here. On October the 18th, Justin Nelson, the Democratic candidate for Attorney General of Texas, will be here. Same song, different verse. We've asked Attorney General Paxton to join and are hopeful that he will join at some point between now and the election. October 24th, Chip Roy, the Republican candidate for Congress in Congressional District 21, will be here 2 days later, followed by the Democratic candidate for Congress in that district, Joseph Kopser, on the 26th of October. And then finally, on November the 15th, Eric Johnson, Democrat of Dallas, one of 7 declared candidates for Texas Speaker of the House, will be here as well. That's a lot of events in a very short period of time. Get ready. The fact that we have this space means we're going to be welcoming you in here as often as possible with great events, and I hope that you'll sign up to come to some or many or all, because these events are for you. They're better for Texas, and it's better for all of us when you're in the room, part of the conversation. So I hope you'll be back here to join us. So for our first event here at Studio 919, I want to introduce this morning's distinguished guest, MJ Hegar, who is the Democratic nominee in the race for U.S. House District 31. In her first run for office, Ms. Hegar defeated 3 fellow Democrats in the March primary, faces the 8-term Republican incumbent, Congressman John Carter, in the November general election. Raised in Cedar Park, Ms. Hegar has a degree from the University of Texas at Austin and is a decorated veteran of the United States Air Force. In 2009, following a deployment in Afghanistan, her third, in which she was shot down and wounded but completed her rescue mission, she was awarded the Purple Heart. 2 years later, she received the Distinguished Flying Cross with Valor, one of only a handful of women in U.S. military history to receive it. Subsequently, she was the lead plaintiff in a successful lawsuit that forced the federal government to repeal its 65-year-old policy excluding women from ground combat. Her memoir, Shoot Like a Girl, One Woman's Dramatic Fight in Afghanistan and on the Home Front, was published in 2017, complete with a front cover blurb by Senator John McCain. Please note, in mid-July, I personally invited Congressman Carter to sit for an interview this fall before the election, and he said he would consider it. No answer yet. Here's hoping he gets to yes. For now, please join me in welcoming MJ Hegar. Oh, goodness. Thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you.
Good morning, and thank you.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you getting up early. As you pointed out, you have little kids, so you're going to be up early anyway, right?
Every day.
Indeed. I want to talk about the issues that you would deal with as a member of Congress representing the 31st District, but I want to talk politics first and the contours of this race.
Okay.
We're 54 days from the midterms, and the thing that strikes me is I can't believe I'm sitting across from a Democrat running for Congressional District 31.
Right.
If you look at the history of this race, logically, there's no reason for us to be paying attention to this race or to you. The district was created after redistricting, back after the 2000 census. Congressman Carter won the first race in 2002 by 42 points against the Democrat. He's been reelected 7 times, 6 times a Democrat ran, and every time the margin has been enormous. I think the smallest margin over those years was 19 points. The best a Democrat has ever done against Carter in that district was to lose by 19 points. Donald Trump won by 12.5 points against Hillary Clinton in that district in 2016. Greg Abbott beat Wendy Davis by more than 25 points in that district. Why are we even talking about this? What makes you think this is a competitive race?
Well, I think when we talk about how many points somebody won a race by,
Right.
we have to take into consideration how many people voted. So
Okay.
really we should be talking about the number of votes that we have to overcome in order to be competitive. So in the last midterm, 150,000 people in my district voted. So winning by 20 points is actually not as impressive when you consider how few people are voting.
Right, but this is the argument that I and people like me have with Democrats in Texas all the time. Respectful but firm. I say it's a red state, they say it's a non-voting state, and I say you're proving my point. The fact that it's a non-voting state means it's a red state. At the end of the day, you can't make it anything other than a red state if you don't turn out your guys. So why
Right.
haven't you turned out your guys?
Well, I think that, the fact that nobody has ever really run a sophisticated campaign against John Carter works in my advantage. I have built a great team. I've put the right staff in place. We've
Right.
been able to raise resources. The incumbent John Carter outspent his opponent last cycle 50-1. Money is not everything,
Right.
but money is a big part in how we talk to voters in a
Right.
district this size. You can't do it all on door knocking.
So having a well-funded candidate, and we'll talk about your extraordinary fundraising in this cycle, not just for your district, but compared to most other people running for Congress, you're very near the top on that. That's going to be a factor. But stay with the numbers, because you said, well, this is about turning out voters. I look
Right.
back at the primary total this time, not previous elections, when maybe people didn't turn out. But this was an election in which we heard Democrats are agitated, they're motivated, they're going to turn out. Republicans, John Carter and his primary opponent, got 23,000 more people to turn out for their primary. Remember, this is not a contested primary, so Republicans were not necessarily motivated the way they may have been in a contested Democratic primary. John Carter and his opponent got 23,000 more votes combined than the 4 Democrats who ran for the Democratic primary. In fact, John Carter himself, in getting only about 65% of the vote in the primary, got 4,000 more votes than all the Democrats running combined. That tells me, even with you on the ticket, even in an election year like this, Democrats still have a problem turning out voters.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a contested primary. It was actually a pretty bitter primary between him and Sweeney.
Right.
He was taking out ads and actually campaigning more than I even see him doing so now.
Right.
And I think that an 8-term incumbent only winning with 65% of his vote is something to be talked about as well.
Right.
But I would say that in this district, we don't have a lot of primary voters, really on either side.
Because the district has not been competitive, people don't have a habit of thinking, I've got to turn out.
Correct. And I think that we also have a habit of independents and even Democrats voting in Republican primaries.
Right.
I am one. I have voted in a Republican primary in the past.
Right.
That's something, unique to Texas and a handful of other states, that we don't register as Republicans or Democrats. We vote in
Right.
whichever primary we think is the most critical at the time. And the Democratic primaries in my district haven't been very critical.
Right.
So there's a habit pattern there too.
The route to victory for you is what? Is it turn out more Democrats? Is it persuade Republicans to cross over? Is it turn out more independents? I hear Democrats, not in your race necessarily, but around the state, talking a lot about unlikely voters. We're going to turn out unlikely. Well, they're unlikely voters for a reason. They're people who don't have a history of voting in midterm elections, if at all. Mm-hmm. So what's the magic in this case? What's the motivator for those unlikely voters to turn around?
Well, I mean, we have the data-driven paths of, targeting women and veterans and,
Right.
making sure that we energize the base and all of those things. But I really think that the key is a little bit less political punditry and a little bit more inspire people by showing them that we actually have a choice. I've lived in this district since I was 7, and
Right.
I have never really felt like I had a choice. People in my district are not going to turn out and vote for somebody just because of the letter by their name on either side.
Right.
And so presenting them with another option, showing them there is somebody here who's actually going to provide present leadership, somebody who's listening to you, going to collaborate with you, going to meet with you, going to provide constituent services, going to take Texas values up to DC and represent the people of this district. That's really going to be the key.
Right.
Because we have so much voter apathy in this district. Across demographic barriers, frankly, around every group we have voter apathy.
Yeah.
And it's because, my district doesn't come to the polls to vote against something because they fear something. They will come to the polls only to vote for something because they're inspired by something.
So you're running, that's a good transition. So you're running a campaign that is for something and not against something. I wonder, in a case like this, is this race about you? Is this race about him, in this case John Carter, or at a level above you, is this race about the president? Because in a lot of cases in Texas and elsewhere, Democrats running for whatever office they're running for are really running against the president.
None. This race is about them. This race is about the people in my district,
Right.
and the fact that their pleas and their need for help have fallen on deaf ears. I'll give you two good examples. One, the VA in Temple was investigated, and there were some, abuses being reported and some problems being reported. And I think the Statesman broke it in November of last year. John Carter wrote an op-ed in response saying he was shocked. Well, I mean, my first response to that was, well, I'm not shocked, and neither are the, tens of thousands of veterans in my district and
Yep.
the people who have been trying to get care or have suffered through some of the things that we saw in the report. It's been relatively common knowledge among our community, and I would guess that if he would read probably the stacks of complaints that are on his desk, mine in there included, that he would know. We need elected officials, not just John Carter, but elected officials, period, to stop taking photo ops and velvet ropes and taking pictures and actually go to places and shake hands with people and look them in the eye and talk to them.
Yep.
Stop sending form letters and responses to constituent problems and actually start engaging with constituents.
And you've made this point consistently. Again, you're not the only Democratic
really the
candidate
main
to
thing
make
I'm
this
running on.
point against a Republican, that the Republican incumbent in my district is out of touch, doesn't have any connection to the district, doesn't know what's going on, does not come back home and show up or give us the opportunity to offer feedback.
I don't know that that's a
been
Republican unique thing,
Well, but it's been
though.
a persistent theme, at least in the case of some Democrats running against some Republicans in
Yeah.
Texas this time.
Probably true.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably because there's more Republican incumbents than there are Democratic incumbents.
But you call BS on that on both sides. You think
I
there are
do.
Democrats who are as guilty of that as Republicans?
There's very little to me more offensive in a democracy than a safe representative.
Right.
People who think they're not answerable to the constituents, that they're going to get elected no matter what they do, and they don't have to come back to their district. People ask me what's the first thing you're going to do when you get to D.C., and I say I'm going to turn around, get on a plane, and get back home and provide my district with constituent services that we've been missing for 16 years.
Right.
When I was in D.C. and I was scared and alone and looking to try to fix something that I thought was hurting our country and hurting our military, I turned to who you would turn to in D.C., your representatives. And I expected my pleas to fall on deaf ears with Ted Cruz. I didn't expect it with my own congressman who ran on a pro-military platform, who I have voted for, by the way, and he just wasn't interested in
So that's an
engaging.
interesting, just let's stay with that for a second. So in previous elections where John Carter has been on the ballot against a Democrat, you voted for John Carter.
I have voted for him,
Right.
just like most of the people who vote in my district have,
Right.
especially since I wasn't going to vote for the person who had another letter by their name just because their name appeared on the ballot.
Right.
We have to have an infrastructure. For a two-party system to be healthy, we have to have an infrastructure with both parties where the diverse ideas and people in the district can hear diverse ideas and have conversations about differing opinions, that those conversations are happening in some other places in the country. And we just have to be able to give people a safe space and a voice to be able to discuss these important issues.
Yeah, I want to come back to the question I asked you about whether this race is about Carter or you or Trump. You gave a very good answer politically
That's
that this
the
is
truth.
about the constituents, and I believe that you believe that. But at the end of the day, you are running against the incumbent. You are going to make John Carter's work for the constituents of your district, or lack of work, an issue. Clearly, you're making it an issue right here.
If I have to pick one between the three, I would say it's more about
Right.
my race and less about, I'm not that guy. We've got over 800,000 people in the
Right.
district that are not him. They're not running.
Right.
I'm running because I match this district. I have grown up in this district. I love
Yeah.
this district. I am this district. And this district deserves better.
You're running on bio, and you're running on your own affirmative values as they align with the values of the people in the district.
Running on character.
Right.
I think it's important that we stop trusting politicians who say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and we start asking people, what have you done? Show me your pattern of character. When people are trying to tell you who they are through their actions, we should listen to them.
Right. So I'm not going to hear the president's name for the next 54 days in your advertising or in your district. You're not going to run against the president?
No, I don't know why I would. This isn't about a single person.
Well, let me make the case for why it might be. Every midterm election, the president's not on the ballot. This midterm election, the president is absolutely on the ballot. This is the most nationalized midterm election of our lifetimes, and there are a lot of Democrats in Texas running to beat Republican incumbents who are saying we need to check on the president. We need to take back control of the House so that we can stall the president's agenda, which is bad for Texas and bad for the district. Now, there may be disagreement about that. John Carter certainly wouldn't agree about that. But it seems like a pretty conventional way to think about this election cycle to make it about him. You're saying no.
Well, I don't know that Trump is as big of an issue in my district. He did, win the presidency with 53% of the vote, so not like a huge, majority that
he did a little bit better than he did statewide in your district.
But he also only got 24% of the vote in the primary, in the Republican primary.
Right.
I just don't know that. I think the people in my district were very national security minded because we have more veterans in the district than in 97% of the rest of the country.
Indeed.
So I think the people in my district, while they may not be paying attention to the clickbait, kind of headline political pundit kind of stories that come out, they are paying attention to the world stage. And I think that they realize what I realize, which is this isn't about one person. Our system and our Constitution sets up our government to where one person can't take it down our democracy. It's not that the sky is falling. It's that we have a system in place that is not providing a check and balance, that we have a lot of complicit and silent people who know what they're seeing is wrong. They know what's happening with our allies. They know the dismantling of our State Department, which is going to cost the lives of men and women in uniform in the next generation that we're passing the torch to. They know what they're seeing, that they could be providing some guidance, and they refuse to, either out of fear, intimidation, laziness. I don't know.
And you put Congressman Carter in that category.
I absolutely put him in that category. He kind of offhanded mentioned that he didn't agree with the migrant family separation at the border, and that is something that is so offensive to me, not just from a moral and ethical standpoint as a mother watching families get separated, but for me strategically from a military and a national security position, to have the country who holds its world superpower position and its place on the world stage in part due to the fact that we are the beacon of freedom and hope and democracy to the world, institute a policy of fear as a deterrent specifically to keep asylum seekers from coming to this country, goes against everything that I put the uniform on for, that I've lost friends and brothers and sisters in uniform for. And I think that if Congressman Carter saw that it was wrong, he had an obligation to stand up and do something about it. He was in a safe district. He won his last, race by 22 points, like you pointed out. He had no reason to not stand up and do more. But if he saw that it was wrong, he had an obligation.
You said that the statistic you cited, I think, is fascinating, and I've seen the same thing, that there are more veterans living in your district, Congressional District 31, than in 97% of the congressional districts in the country. Is that right?
Yes, we have Fort Hood.
So running as a veteran in this district, presumably, that's a point of connection with a lot of the people you might. This is a really interesting election year in terms of veterans running. We've heard a lot about this. All things considered, you'd rather be a veteran on the ballot this year. It's a boom of people who served in Iraq and Afghanistan. Really, I think you have to go back beyond Vietnam, beyond Korea, back to World War II to see as many veterans on the ballot. There's you, there's Gina Ortiz-Jones, and Joseph Kopser in the Democratic Party of Texas. There's Van Taylor and Dan Crenshaw in the Republican Party around the country, from Connor Lamb in Pennsylvania to Amy McGrath in Kentucky. This is really the year of the veteran run.
Agree.
What is it about being a veteran that necessarily makes you well-positioned? I mean, qualified is a loaded word, but well-positioned to be in Congress and in government?
I think there's veterans on both sides of the aisle, and some of the issues of the day separate us depending on what those issues are. And there are some nonpartisan issues that unite us. There's veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan who served with civilians on the ground, interpreters, intelligence sources, people that we've promised visas to, and now we're seeing travel bans, we're seeing Islamophobia, we're seeing those visas be denied. Those things, aside from being morally reprehensible, are also, again, strategically a mistake, because we have to have the trust of the people on the ground in the countries in which we operate. We understand the cost of war. We also understand there's things worth fighting for. And we also know that every boot on the ground is a failure in diplomacy. So diplomacy is actually the first level of protection for men and women in uniform.
So when you talk about the dismantling of the State Department, that's really, if I breadcrumb this back, you dismantle the State Department, you dismantle diplomacy, and the upshot of that is we have more people going overseas to fight.
You break down relationships with allies, you build up, and admire our adversaries, you don't invest in cybersecurity, you break down relationships with trade. All of those things have an impact, even humanitarian aid. Even humanitarian aid has a strategic piece to this puzzle, and definitely reduces our world influence.
So veterans have a perspective on this that civilians may not have.
But you asked what would we bring different, and I think what we bring that's different is servant leadership. Now, one of the things my opponent has said is that I break down this country for my own self-interest, and I really think that attack says more about him than it does about me. I actually don't think that serving in Congress is in someone's self-interest. I think that if you believe running for Congress is in your self-interest, you're doing it for the wrong reason, and you're there accomplishing the wrong thing.
Right.
With a wave of veterans running from both sides of the aisle, we have servant leaders who understand that it is service, it is sacrifice. If you are benefiting personally, you're doing the wrong thing. We've already shown that we're willing to shed blood and give our lives for this country, so of course we're going to go and sacrifice and risk and not put ourselves and our ego and our resume ahead of the needs of the people in this country.
So I've said that being a veteran on the ballot this year is, all things considered, a plus. It is, of course, also a year in which many women are running for office.
Yes.
I think that the predictions are that we'll elect potentially as many as 100 women to Congress in this cycle. The majority of those are going to be Democrats, but let's accept generally that this is a good year, Democrat or Republican, to be a woman on the ballot. Can you reflect a little bit on that and the degree to which being a woman this cycle as opposed to previous cycles is a positive?
You know, I have some experience being a woman in a male-dominated career field.
Not your first rodeo, right?
Yes, not just as a pilot even, as an aircraft maintenance officer before I was ever a pilot.
Right.
And I've never thought of myself as a female aircraft maintenance officer or a female pilot. I was just a pilot.
Right.
And I feel like I had the benefit of being in the Air Force that was already very, very, very heavily integrated with different genders. So it just never occurred to me. Now, there were moments where I was discriminated against, and I actually was shocked every time. So I feel the same now. I don't think of myself as a female candidate. I do think of myself as a parent, not specifically just a mom, but my husband is every bit the parent that I am. So
right.
I think of myself as a parent, and I think about the future of my kids a lot when I'm doing this.
Yeah.
So, I think that there are things about being a female candidate that hurt me, and there are things about being a female candidate that help me.
It's hard to imagine in 2018 that people look at women who run for office as any different than anybody. I mean, it's sort of hard to even say the words. But we acknowledge that in Texas, where the population is slightly more than half women, you've got only 3 out of 36 members of Congress who are women. You've got only 155 women elected to the Texas legislature in history. 85 legislatures, 181 members per legislature. There have been fewer women elected to the Texas legislature than the number of seats in one legislature. We have one non-judicial woman elected statewide in Texas at the moment. Clearly, the population being half women has not produced half women in office.
I think we need more veterans in office. I think we need more women.
Right.
Frankly, we need more Texas women in office.
What about Texas? Well, I know you were born in Connecticut. We're all from someplace. We're all from someplace. So why are Texas?
Reminds me every day.
Why are Texas women any more qualified to be in Congress than Connecticut women?
So I moved here when I was 7, so I am a carpetbagger.
Well,
no, I
get it. It's
look
fine.
at Ann Richards, and I think we need more of that.
Yeah.
We need more. You've heard me say this before.
Yeah.
So you know what I'm going to say. We need more ass-kicking, motorcycle-riding Texas Democratic women.
Right.
We just do.
So that part, the bio part, the veteran part, you are running as a candidate whose bio is front and center.
Bio should be front and center.
Right.
It's character, it's who you are,
Right.
it's predictive, it's more predictive of what you're going to do than whatever promises you're
So
making.
you're voting for a person, you're not voting for a set of issue positions, or you're not voting
People in my district
or you're
do.
not voting for accomplishments necessarily.
Agreed.
Right.
Unless accomplishments speak to the character that you're running on, yeah.
Right. You have said at various points why you decided to get in this race, because this is your first run for office. You have said you want to protect the progress we've made.
Yes.
And that is absolutely true.
Critical.
When you talk about the progress we've made, what specifically are you referring to?
I feel like growing up, there were civil liberties and women's rights that we took for granted, thinking that they were settled. And I'm beginning to realize, as a bit of a student of history, that we have to relitigate and refight these battles every generation. The things that I grew up with taking for granted, my mother's generation knew we couldn't take for granted because they fought for those things.
Right.
And then, I got a real slap in the face lesson in civics when I sued the Secretary of Defense, repealed the ground combat exclusion policy, and then the next day we were celebrating, popping champagne, and Jeff Sessions went on TV and said we're going to legislate that policy back in place.
Right.
And I realized the beauty of our country and our government and our Constitution and the way we're set up is that we can fix problems, but the problem is we can create problems so easily. But that's a good thing. It's a living document. It's something that we are given the tools to fix things. But boy, sometimes we use those tools to screw things up. So we have got to elect people who are going to provide a check and balance, not just on the executive, but on the judicial. It's a 3-branch government. We provide checks and balances on each other, and we have to have a Congress that has the intestinal fortitude and managerial courage and courage of our convictions, and stop putting our ego first to actually provide that check and balance. And I don't care what party's in control of either other branch. I think that we need people who are going to stand up and do what's right, regardless of what they're told to do by party leadership on either side.
Right. Are there? So in a district that has so many veterans, has Fort Hood, it seems to me that the ban on women in ground combat is not a terribly controversial issue in your district.
It's not. And honestly, when I set out on this, the ACLU I partnered with the ACLU on it, and when they asked me to be the lead plaintiff, I pretty immediately said yes, and they said, well, we want you to sleep on it. We want you to understand you're tanking your military career. A lot of the men and women who you served with may turn on you and start telling stories about how ineffective you were to try to discredit you, and people are going to dig through your background, which is part of the reason I'm running, is I've already been through that. I got death threats, I mean, it was a pretty horrifying experience, but not a single person I served with in combat, to include men who said they didn't think I should be there because I was a woman. They were all incredibly supportive.
So
they saw that it was about military effectiveness.
So when you talk about progress being rolled back, that's one thing that you're absolutely certain we need to make certain we don't see.
I will never take my eye off this ball.
Let me ask you about another issue. When people today, in the middle of the Brett Kavanaugh hearings, and we're apparently going to have a vote in the committee on Brett Kavanaugh's nomination to the Supreme Court today, when people talk about we don't want to see progress rolled back, that is often code for we're concerned about the future of Roe versus Wade. You are pro-choice.
I am.
Okay. Are you pro-choice without qualifications, without exceptions?
I'm pro-choice because I recognize that not everything that we find offensive or think is wrong should be legislated. So I see how important it is that we not write laws that are, so limiting that it's going to cause more problems than they're trying to fix, that it's going to cost lives, the lives of mothers.
Yeah.
I think that there are actually much more effective ways. They just happen to be harder. But you know what? The right path usually is harder.
Yeah.
We can legislate away our problems, or we can actually treat the root causes. I am for trying to prevent as many unwanted pregnancies as possible, but I think we do that through education, access to affordable contraception, women's health care services. We are the dead last in the country and way, way, way behind some third world countries. And I think rolling back Roe versus Wade is going to have more of an impact than just making abortion illegal. It's going to make women's health care in this country even worse. There are groups who provide women's healthcare services, and one of my good friends from high school, who happens to be my hairdresser, had her life saved by Planned Parenthood, for example, through cervical screening and cancer. And I just think that there's so much more to this conversation. We try to barrel things down to oversimplify them. This is about the president, or this is about abortion, or this is about this.
Right.
And these things are actually much more complex and not in silos, and they impact so many other things.
Can you sell that? I mean, it's a nuanced answer. It's a complex answer. Can you sell that nuance and complexity? Can you sell support of Planned Parenthood? Can you sell a belief that Roe versus Wade should not be overturned in this district?
I have, and it's because I'm not selling it. It's because it's what I truly believe with all of my heart.
Right. And if you and your constituents in this district, should you win, are not entirely aligned on this issue, from your perspective, peace.
I have many pro-life people supporting me because they believe that the policies I'm suggesting will end up preventing more unwanted pregnancies and more abortions than legislating that it's illegal.
I got to bring this back around to Congressman Carter, because as much as you've talked about protecting the progress that we've made, you've also made an issue in the viral ad that put you in front of so many people around Texas and around the country. You made an issue of the fact that when you went to Congress to lobby for the change in the ground combat exclusion policy. You went to see your hometown, you mentioned it today, went to see my hometown Congressman John Carter. He would not take a meeting with me. And you suggested that one of those reasons might be because you were not a donor.
It was suggested to me by his staff.
Right. You know that Congressman Carter's campaign has said it is false that Congressman Carter would not meet with Ms. Hegar. It is false that Congressman Carter would not meet with Ms. Hegar specifically because she was not a donor. They've said that's false. Can you prove, just so we're clear about this, because they've made an issue of this, you know?
Yes,
Can you prove you went to meet with Congressman Carter and he refused to meet with you?
Yes. So first they said she never requested a meeting.
Right.
And when PolitiFact called us on that, we gave them all the emails of, actually we had set up a meeting where his staff had said, yes, he'll meet with you. So I went to DC with the Combat Integration Initiative, which is a group that I co-founded, which was code for 40 really pissed off female combat veterans. And we went to DC to meet with all of our representatives, and many of their representatives had pushed them off to aides or whatever. And I was excited because mine had said, yes, I'll take this meeting.
Right.
Or a member of his staff had said he would take the meeting.
Right.
So I showed up to the meeting, and I was given an aide that looked at his phone the whole time, didn't talk to me at all. In fact, in my notes, and I was never considering running for office, so it wasn't loaded or anything like that, but in my notes it says this was the least effective meeting we've had on the Hill today.
Right.
Out of all the people that we met with.
Your own congressman's office.
Right.
Yeah.
So when we provided proof that we actually did request and were granted and scheduled a meeting that he never showed up for, then the story became, oh, well, he was running late for that meeting and she refused to stay, which surprised me because it doesn't make any sense that I would take time off work, spend time out of my personal pocket, create an organization to lobby Congress, go there, wait for my congressman, and be told if you wait, I don't care, 12 hours, I would have sat and waited to talk to him. So that just isn't,
How
true.
many times did you try to see him?
I don't know that, it's not like I was banging down his door. I could only go to DC. I was working full-time in the healthcare industry at the time. So, not, multiple, probably 3, something like that, phone calls and emails.
It is true that his unwillingness to see you was a motivating factor in your decision to come back home and run.
It wasn't until I realized it wasn't just me. When I started complaining that he wouldn't see me, I started talking to my neighbors and friends and organizations, and they were like, yeah, no, he won't see anyone, don't take it personal.
Right.
And then the Hill Country News put out an article called Where's Carter? And said people can't get a meeting with him.
Right.
And then when asked, why haven't you had a town hall in 5 years, instead of saying, oh, I have, or oh, I will, or oh, there's one scheduled, it was, well, I don't like being yelled at. And his staff said, well, since what happened with Gabby Giffords, we don't like in-person town halls. And I'm thinking, so since what happened with Gabby Giffords, you feel like there's a gun violence problem in this country and you're afraid to have a town hall, but we're expected to send our children to school and trust that. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Nothing that I'm seeing makes any sense to me. And as a mom and as a District 31, almost born and raised, as a Leander Lion, as a not a Republican, not an independent, I am a Democrat, okay, but I am an independent thinker.
Yeah.
And as an American, as a human being, we just deserve better.
Right. You make this point in that ad I alluded to, Doors. This is the first ad, the viral ad that got a lot of attention for you. Whose idea was this ad? People have put on campaign ads that have come and gone, eminently forgettable forever. Whose idea was this ad? What is the short story of how this came to be?
The team that I put together is amazing, and we've been collaborating for over a year before a lot of the members of my team ever saw a dime or got paid for anything. Just ideologically, the people on my team think that we're fighting for something important here.
Yeah.
And the team, we were talking about what do we want to tell people? What do we want to tell people about why I'm doing this?
Right.
And what do people need to hear in order to believe that I'm going to fight for them? And we just decided that was the bio. The background, the character, why I'm doing this is because of who I am, and who I am is my bio. And it's about more than just being a veteran.
Right.
It's working in healthcare for 5 years during the implementation of the Affordable Care Act and seeing how that impacted patients and providers and seeing how it could be improved, but also seeing that the healthcare costs were rising at a disproportionate rate from GDP and were absolutely unsustainable. The healthcare administration that I was a part of this was our sky is falling. Our industry is going to crumble because it's unsustainable.
Right.
So, I mean, who I am and the fact that I'm from here is why I'm running.
Yeah, but you know, there are bio ads and there have been bio ads. This was not a bio ad. This was Goodfellas. This was Scorsese directing Goodfellas.
Well,
this was
Goodfellas is who I am.
This was tracking. This was tracking shots. This was rock and roll. This was a very different ad, and I think that the production of the ad was as much the reason for the success and the virality of this ad as the story. So again, I ask you, who? I mean, if your campaign came up with the idea to do this ad in this way, God bless. But I'm wondering, how did this actually happen?
I'm telling you, it was just a collaboration of our team. Now, Putnam is the group that we partnered with that is amazing and have done some amazing viral
They did
ads.
They did the Jason Kander ad.
They did the Jason Kander ad.
In the last cycle in Missouri.
They did Amy McGrath's.
Amy McGrath this year. Right.
But honestly, you know, every time I see something that has to do with who I am, and especially if it has to do with my kids, I am meticulous to the point where it drives my staff crazy about making sure that it's authentic and true to who we are.
Exactly so.
And the first time I saw the script for that, I was like, I'm good.
This is it.
And they were like,
so let's very
sure?
quickly talk about.
Yes, it's good.
Let's very quickly talk about the metrics on this ad, what the result of it was. So by my count, I went last night to YouTube and to Facebook, and I counted up the number of views of this ad up to this point. It's more than 5.6 million views of this ad. I'm assuming not all of those are in Congressional District 31. In the 10 days following the release of the ad, you raised more than $750,000 for your campaign. In quarter two, that $750,000 was part of a total raised of about $1.1 million. You outraised an 8-term incumbent Republican in a Republican plus 19 district by 4-1. He raised less than $270,000. You raised $1.1 million in that district. You right now have about 330, or did at the end of the second quarter, 330,000 more on hand than Congressman Carter. I was interested to see that 94% of the contributions that you received were small dollar contributions.
$200 and below.
Right. But I also see, if this number is correct, that about half of the money that you received was from out of the district, and a lot of that was from out of state. That is often a point of criticism. It was for Wendy Davis, it has been for Beto O'Rourke. Well, of course, he's the candidate of Patton Oswalt and Chelsea Handler. You know, you want Hollywood values in your state, or in your race, or in your district? Is there anything to apologize for having people from New York? Because I looked also to see geographically, where is the money coming from in your campaign? So locally is the first tranche, but either Hollywood and or Los Angeles and New York, or New York and Los Angeles, depending upon when you look, are second and third. Anything to apologize for?
I don't think so. I talk to people every day from inside the district and from outside the district,
right.
and I hear things like, my daughter's going to school there, or I used to live there, I grew up there, or I'm about to move there in 6 months and I'm terrified of moving to Texas. We have this reputation in the rest of the country, you may have heard. And you know, we can't be thinking of things in silos like that anymore. I think that, you know, I'm going to do what it takes to provide good representation to this district, and there is such a thing as money that I will not take, which I don't think my opponent has said.
What kind of money won't you take?
I'm refusing corporate PAC money. Right. I am absolutely an individual, you know, people locking arms saying, this is the person we want to represent us. The laws that I'm able to impact are going to impact outside of the district, even though I'll be representing my district's values. And I think that if we're going to talk about where money comes from, it's probably more important to talk about where that money comes from instead of geographically, but actually industry. You know, John Carter, and I'm going to bring this up for you because I know you're going to want to. Henry Cuellar and John Carter are two of the top 3 recipients of private prison money.
Well, I'm about to come to Henry Cuellar. Give me.
The suspense was killing
me. Did you bring the Henry Cuellar temporary tattoos with you?
We haven't finished printing them up.
Okay. I mean, I will say that while the second and third geographic sources of your money are New York and Los Angeles, the second of his is Washington. And he takes John Carter takes a significant amount of money from PACs, where you take a significant amount of monty from small donors.
Mostly out of state, and mostly corporate PACs and private prisons, and so I don't know that that's going to be
full
an
disclosure.
Issue. Yeah.
You want third quarter is about to end at the end of September. fundraising. You want to give us a preview of your fundraising for the third quarter?
No.
No?
I can say this. We were outraising John Carter before the video ever hit.
Right.
We've consistently been outraising him in individual contributions. He's never
Right.
beaten me in individual contributions. And then in Q1 of this year, we outraised him by $80,000, even with all his PAC money.
Right.
In Q2, when the video dropped, we would have doubled his fundraising without the video.
Without the ad. Will you outraise him again?
We're outworking him.
Will you outraise him again in the third quarter?
Yes.
Will you outraise him by as much as you did the last time?
Yes.
Will you beat your fundraising total in Q3 that you put up on Q2? Come on, don't look at them, look at me.
I don't know. Frankly, it's not a conversation we have every day. I don't
Right.
know. I don't know where we are. I
Right.
know that we are outworking him. And let me just say this in his defense. It's a hard job. It is a hard job, raising money,
Right.
talking to people. It takes energy. You can hear it in my voice. It's a hard job. I get it. Not everybody wants to do the work. And if you are at a place where you think it's too hard and you don't like being yelled at and meeting with constituents is taxing, that's okay.
Yeah.
You're still a good person. You can step aside and let someone who's willing to do that work take your job.
Let's go to Congress. Let's go to let's go to Congressman Cuellar. So Congressman Henry Cuellar of Laredo, the other day, in essence, because he will say I did not do this, but in essence, he endorsed your opponent, Democrat of Laredo, by encouraging people to support and to attend or support Congressman Carter, who was having a fundraiser, I believe, at Mi Tierra in San Antonio.
Delicious.
What's going on here? He is the co-chair of the Blue Dog Democrats in Congress, a group that has actually supported your candidacy, has it not? So he's the co-chair of the Blue Dogs in Congress, but he is helping a Republican member of the delegation by encouraging his supporters to support Congressman Carter against you. What is going on here?
Well, I don't pay much attention to what John Carter does outside of the district. He's outside of the district most of the time. And I can tell you that I don't agree with everything that every member of the Blue Dogs stands for. It's a pretty actually diverse group. They are fiscally responsible and national security minded, and those are the two things I do agree with. I'm also fiscally responsible and national security minded. So I don't want this to reflect poorly on them. And I actually have nothing against Congressman Cuellar. I think.
Do you know him?
I don't. I did try to establish relationships with every member of the Texas Democratic delegation and never heard back from him. So he and John Carter have that in common, that they don't return my phone calls. But I have nothing against him at all. I think that he's friends, and I think that that's a good thing, to be friends with people from the other side of the aisle. I'm a huge fan of bipartisanship and working together to get things done. I do think there's a difference, though, between the friendship that belongs on the golf course and the fighting for our ideals and our values on the battlefield.
Right.
And I think it's actually not an example of bipartisanship. I think it's actually an example of what's wrong with politics today. I think too many people.
It's too clubby.
It's a little bit good old boys club, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. It's a little clubby. It's a little. I'm going to put my personal interests and my personal feelings and my personal relationships and my ego and my resume and my future ahead of the values that the people who voted for you put you there to fight for.
But the counter to that, I would point out, you gave an interview to military.com within the last couple of weeks, and this is a quote from you that you told military.com. This toxic hyperpartisanship is part of a gridlock that keeps us from getting anything done in D.C. It seems to me that you're advocating for more Democrats and more Republicans in conversation, working side by side. So why shouldn't a Henry Cuellar work side by side with, or support even, a John Carter to break through the hyper-partisanship that you yourself say is causing the problems in Washington?
Because I have long since said that working and compromise, not compromise, that's kind of my point that I'm actually trying to make. So working together and accomplishing things in a bipartisan way doesn't mean compromising your values. So when I went to open jobs for women in the military, I didn't just go to Democrats and say this is a women's rights issue. I went to Democrats and said women's rights and Constitution, and then I went to the right and I said military effectiveness and recruiting and retention and tying the hands of the commanders in the field. There's a way to work in a bipartisan way by letting go of your ego and not insisting that people buy your reasons for doing things, but actually finding their reasons why they should agree with you. And you can work in a bipartisan way without compromising your values, okay? And I think that Congressman Cuellar does a good job of working across the aisle and working in a bipartisan way. I think that raising money for somebody who doesn't represent your values.
That crosses the line.
That's different. That's actually going against the values that you're trying to fight for.
I want to go to questions in 5 minutes, but I want to do here for the balance of our time together something of a game show speed round on issues.
What could go wrong?
Have you met me before? A lot can go wrong. I want to do something of a game show speed round, and I want to run through a bunch of issues that are going to be relevant to you and representing your district should you get elected to Congress. This year, Medicare for All is a bit of a bauble on the charm bracelet for Democratic candidates. It is a test of your progressiveness as a candidate running for office. Are you for Medicare for All or not?
So I have been the recipient of multiple single-payer models.
You know government health care, right?
I certainly do.
You have been the recipient of government health care.
I was the recipient of one called TRICARE, which is actually very similar to Medicare, and my mom is on Medicare now, and I think it's a great program.
Right.
I think a Medicare for All model could be great, but I am also pragmatic, and I am fiscally responsible. I want to know how we're going to pay for it. I also do think we're actually already paying for it, just not with taxes, but with high healthcare costs and with people who are getting their primary care in emergency rooms. So
well, the fact that we're paying for it, all of us in property taxes, right?
Yes.
Healthcare costs are being borne by all of us.
So, I mean, I want to make sure that I'm not just leading with my heart, but also my head. And so I do like Medicare, and I think a Medicare for All model could work.
But you hedge on Medicare for All until you know how it's paid for.
What I would like, at least as a stepping stone, is a Medicare option for people.
Right.
When I was pregnant with my first child, my company was going through layoffs, and I almost got, my whole department got laid off, my boss got laid off. And had I been laid off, I would have been faced with having a pre-existing condition of pregnancy, right? And it would have been nice to be able to go on Medicare then. Yeah. We have, it's a barrier to the thing that is the heartthrob of America, which is entrepreneurship.
Right.
People can't quit their job and go back to school because they're tied to their job with their healthcare program. They can't quit their job and create a small business because they're tied to their job with their healthcare.
Yeah. And pre-existing conditions have always, in this campaign, been for you something of a bright line, right?
Yes. There are people who stay in domestic violence situations because they can't leave their partner because of healthcare. Right. It's a huge problem in this country. We have to have a public option to buy into Medicare.
About a quarter of your district is Hispanic?
Yes.
Of the Congressional 31. So let me ask you about border security stuff. A lot of controversy at the state level about investment in border security, and at the federal level as well, and especially in the last 2 years. And again, a test of one's progressiveness as a candidate in this cycle is, are you willing to have a conversation about getting rid of Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, ICE?
I'm frankly not really sure why that's a conversation, because you can get rid of an agency, and if a new agency is in charge of implementing the same policy, you have the same problem. The problem is not the agency. The problem is the policy that they're being told to put in place. So no, I am absolutely not for abolishing ICE. I am for giving them better leadership and guidance, better policy to follow. I am for comprehensive immigration reform. I am absolutely always for national security first, given my background. But that means that we have to provide a humanitarian response to asylum seekers. We need to invest in border security through information and technology and staffing and giving our agencies the right policies to follow.
One of the ways that Republicans campaign against Democrats at election time is to say they want to take our guns away. This is a big issue in the Senate race, where we've mostly done personality versus culture war, but we haven't talked a lot about issues, except the gun issue has come up in the Senate race. That absolutely has come up. And in a lot of the local races, guns will come up. Do you want to take our guns away?
You'll have to take mine first. I own 5 firearms.
Do you want to take your own guns away? Maybe I should ask that.
No, I don't. Right. I'm a responsible firearm owner.
Right.
Responsible firearm owners.
You believe in the Second Amendment?
First ones, absolutely.
Right.
The first ones to want common sense gun safety legislation, because we recognize it is the greatest threat to our Second Amendment rights, this gun violence epidemic.
Right.
We've got to do something about it, but it's going to take more than just common sense gun safety legislation. We have to repeal the Dickey Amendment. We have to end Citizens United if we're going to do anything about the gun violence epidemic.
You believe that there's a campaign finance tributary off of the main body of water here that is
just
the gun issue, right? You think that the NRA's involvement and involvement of other gun rights groups from a campaign finance standpoint is part of the problem?
It's a huge part of the problem. 75% of all dues-paying NRA members want expanded background checks. 90% of Americans across the board do. Why can't we get it passed in Congress if that's the case?
So let me ask you about that quickly. Yes or no? Expanded background checks?
Yes.
Ban on automatic weapons?
No.
Ban on high-capacity magazines?
Yes.
Ban on bump stocks?
Yes.
Red flag laws?
Yes.
Okay, so does that put you in sync with or out of sync with the people in your district?
I think that we need to be more careful with the language we use. I think actually speed rounds like that are really damaging because what they do.
You're welcome. Just run against the media.
My race,
it works every place
not
else.
Not to my race,
fine.
but to our discourse.
Yeah.
Because people want to oversimplify things.
Right.
The reason I say no to a ban on assault rifles is because I don't know what that means. What does that mean? Are they going to come and take mine? Are they going to come and are they just going to stop selling it? Are they going to go door to door? And I mean, we need to say more. We're oversimplifying things.
Yeah, but can you sell, you don't like the word sell, but can you campaign on nuance on an issue like that that to many people seems so black and white, is so emotional, and has been such a kill card for so many candidates?
I may be the only person in this room to have used an automatic rifle for its intended purpose.
That's right, yeah, it's
for its intended purpose in the military. And, I think that if people want to own those weapons, they should go through the same type of screening and training that I had.
Will you support impeachment against the president should you be elected to the U.S. House, Democrats take control, and impeachment is an issue?
I will support impeachment of any president, regardless of party, when proof comes across my desk that there is an impeachable offense in a law that's been broken. There's been a lot of discussion about this. This is an emotional thing. There are some people who, I remember early on, there were so many people terrified of this presidency that they said he should be impeached because he was deleting tweets. I can tell you no, I will not vote for impeachment on that. So I need to see, what the investigation finds out.
But you're not opposed on its face to considering, as a member of the House, a vote for impeachment?
Anyone who says they're opposed to considering impeachment without looking at evidence should be fired immediately.
Yeah, but on that same basis, why shouldn't we fire anybody immediately who says that they're going to impeach the president without having seen evidence? Why is Al Green not supposed to be fired at that point? I mean, if the standard is you need evidence before you pronounce your position, aren't the Democrats who've said that they're going to impeach the president without having seen the evidence as bad as those who say they won't?
I would say that people who make unilateral commitments to how they're going to vote for something, whether that's Speaker of the House or impeachment or any other thing, without understanding what the other options are, who else is running, what's the evidence, I think that that's irresponsible.
So that's just you telling me that when I ask you, as I'm about to, if you're going to vote for Leader Pelosi for Speaker, you're going to tell me I don't know the other options.
It is a disingenuous, pandering answer either way.
Right.
Either way, I'm pandering to one group or the other.
Right.
So I have to just say with my integrity that there are people who are being talked about as running that I would support, and there's, let me put it this way. In the military, we have a change in leadership every few years, and I do think that that's healthy.
Right, so you believe that it is worth having a conversation about whether we need more options from a leadership standpoint?
I do.
You think there's a generational component specifically to the conversation?
So much gridlock and hyperpartisanship that we need a big turnover in a lot of places.
Okay, let's go to questions from the audience. I think we are going to have a microphone walked around. This is the kind of room in which you could use your outside voice, and that would be okay. But I think we'll go ahead and have you be amplified if we can do that.
And I do want to say I apologize in advance. I would normally stay late and talk to everybody, but I'm going to have to bolt because I have a funeral to go to.
We're good.
Apologize.
Sir.
Yes, my question is, there's still a number of children who are separated from their
Yes.
parents, also a number of children who are in detention, oftentimes the same ones. When you get to Congress, what will you do to take care or at least reduce significantly that problem?
What will you do and what can you do?
Yeah, really, those are the two very different questions, right? I think that a lot of times people want answers from congressional leaders about legislation. Okay, so I do think we need comprehensive immigration reform. We need absolutely uncategorically an end to that policy that's disgraceful and un-American. But we need to be doing everything we can, not just from a legal standpoint because they're in violation now of a court order, but from a moral and ethical standpoint. I also think that we're alienating allies and creating a new generation of enemies with these types of policies. I'm going to do everything I can. You haven't seen me going to the border. The border's not in my district. I disagree with, going places for photo ops and things like that. Not that everybody who's gone has. A lot of people who have gone have an actual.
But both Democrats and Republicans have gone down to these
Yes.
shows. Right.
So, I'm going to do everything I can. I'm going to
So
keep
you don't think they should go?
I'm going to keep raising awareness.
You don't think people should go visit these shelters?
I think that if you are on the fence about how you feel about it, or if you feel like you need more information to make a decision, you absolutely should go. I am not on the fence. I know exactly how I feel about it.
Right.
I do feel like I have enough information, a lot in part due to the Texas Tribune reporting that you guys have a bureau down there now, right? that, I don't feel like I need to go down to the border to know.
But if you're going
how,
down there to do a live shot on Chris Hayes, that's not really a reason to be down on the
Well,
border.
I think that I'm glad that there's attention focused on it. The minute that the attention gets moved off, like we saw in Puerto Rico, then the problem gets worse. So I hope that we do continue applying pressure and attention to it.
Got it. Question here? Sir, and then we'll come over here.
Yeah. So our cybersecurity system, MJ, has gotten us into a little problem over the past few years. Could you share your thoughts on that? And you don't have to spend much time on the Space Force.
Yeah, I think that so much investment needs to happen in cybersecurity. Frankly, we need infrastructure investment all over the country in a lot of places. We certainly shouldn't be letting foreign governments supply us with antivirus software or with polling machines for elections or anything like that. But we absolutely, cybersecurity is in my top 3 security threats to the country.
Do you have any concerns about the security of the election that you will be a candidate in this November?
I do, but as a combat veteran, I tend to focus on the things that I can impact. And I'm very focused right now on winning this election and turning out the vote and showing my district that there's somebody here who's going to listen to them and care about them. And so that's what I'm focused on.
Ma'am.
Hi, MJ. First of all, the video that you mentioned that I saw a long time ago is awesome, and just hearing you speak is amazing. Everything you talk about is great.
Thanks.
My question is, you brought up change of leadership. Do you believe in term limits also for people
do.
in Congress and so on?
I do. I'm trying to figure out what that term limit should be. Some people are pointing out to me, one of my favorite things is when somebody says, this is the way things are done, or everything will grind to a halt if we do that. I love hearing those terms because that means those are things I want to look into doing.
Right.
So term limits I think are important. I think there has been a exodus of staffers and legislative aides that provide continuity. So if we were to put term limits in place, we need to make sure we build that back up.
Right.
But I do think that that there have been many people there just way too long, and the fact that they're trying to get reelected, and that's the only thing. And I don't mean talking to their constituents trying to get reelected, but the things that some people in office are doing for money are so damaging to our democracy that if they knew that they weren't going to have to worry about, they didn't want to be 10-term congressmen or 8-term congressmen, then we would have fewer of those problems.
But if you want to, if you believe in term limits, you could make the decision to say, I'm only going to serve X number of terms. Congressman O'Rourke, in fact, is running for the Senate, I believe, in part because when he ran against Congressman Reyes, Chairman Reyes, in 2012, right, he said, I will only serve 4 terms. He was elected to his 3rd term in 2016. He really only had, after this term, 1 more term, so it was a free shot for him. He told his constituents, I'm only going to serve 4 terms. You could tell your constituents, if you believe this is a problem, I'm only going to serve X number of terms.
I thought about that strongly, and I actually started down that road early on in my campaign, and it was a member of my staff who said, please don't say that, because you have to work within the system you have. Get there and vote for term limits for everyone, but if you limit yourself with term limits and no one else is limited, then you have a limited impact.
It's like unilateral disarmament, right?
It's going to, exactly. It's going to impact the committees that I sit on and things like that. So,
okay, let's take one more.
Yes, on the national security issue, climate change is not mentioned on your website yet. Our Secretary of Defense, Jim Mattis, has kept climate change as one of his top national security issues in his department's policies. The military is already spending millions on the effects of climate change on its bases around the world, expected to spend billions in the next 20 to 30 years just from sea level rise alone. Have you thought about those kinds of issues and how it affects our military readiness, not even counting the effects of massive refugees from these countries around the world that are going to be underwater?
I agree with Secretary Mattis that it is one of, if not the greatest, national security threat. But I also think that this is an area where we need to work better in a bipartisan way. The language we use around climate change sometimes is so divisive and makes people defensive and really stops us from any real progress. So when I talk to people about climate change, we don't get into arguments about science. We say, all right, is it or is it not in our nation's best interest to not have a dependence on other countries for foreign oil? Is it in our foreign policy best interest? Is it in the business community's best interest to have a stable input to their business instead of goods and services fluctuating with the cost of oil for transportation? Is it a job creator possibility in my district with the overabundance of wind and solar energy opportunities? That's the way I choose to talk about climate change. There's a Republican mayor in Georgetown, Dale Ross, who has taken huge strides toward clean renewable energy, and Georgetown is one of the first clean renewable energy towns. And I think that we can take a page out of his book and stop making this a partisan issue. The future of our planet and our species is not a partisan issue.
I promised I'd get you out of here on time, and everybody else, it's 9 o'clock. Ms. Hegar, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much.
Good luck on the rest of the campaign. Thank you all very much for coming. We'll see you. Good.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed it, and I
appreciate it.
appreciate you very much.